All right. Good morning, Doug. We're here with a Friday Q&A. Lots of great questions from our viewers. The best way to submit questions, by the way, is to join our Telegram group, which will be in the description below the video. But join the Telegram group, ask questions through there is the best way to make sure they make it as part of these episodes. So let's start off here, Doug. What does Doug make of the current pullback in the prices of gold and gold mining stocks?
Well, as JP Morgan famously said, the market will fluctuate. And I'd love nothing better than for gold to go straight up at this point. But it goes up and down for all kinds of reasons that we can't even know what they are. You know, there's a Zen koan. Those who speak do not know, and those who know do not speak. So I don't have any idea. It's a fluctuation. Don't worry about it. It's not going back to 1,000. It's going higher. Famous last words.
Yeah,
a lot higher.
But I think a lot of times, what people worry about is that has the fundamental thesis for gold and gold stocks changed? No, and
no, it's more urgent than ever, quite frankly. And right now, the gold stocks, I've said it many times before, and I'll say it again, they're super bargains. A lot of these stocks are selling at 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 times earnings at the very time when all these tech stocks have no earnings. They have gigantic losses. So it's a huge anomaly that's opened up in the market. And the only way I can explain it is that the average fund manager today is of an age where he has no personal experience with gold, where his education as an economist, most of them take degrees in economics, have poo-pooed gold and said it's a ridiculous pet rock the way Warren Buffett does. So this is a rare opportunity as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. So next question is, if you had, this person had said, if you have young kids and you could work anywhere and you could only choose living in 2 states, I don't know why that's the case here, but Utah or Florida, which would you move to?
Yeah, I can see why somebody would choose Utah because it's socially conservative. But, you know, if you're not a Mormon, I mean, you can benefit from, you know, the conservative and relatively crime-free type of society they have. Okay, that's great. Or Florida, very, very different place. Which would I choose? Well, look, I'm not sure if I'd limit myself to just those 2 states. So if you're gonna stay in the US, what's important? Well, I don't want to pay state income tax if I have an income. And what is it? I don't know what the highest state income tax is. Is it California or Massachusetts?
I think it's
New
California.
York? California. And what is it, 10%?
I thought it was like 11.4 or something like that. I could be wrong.
Yeah, and of course, a lot of the municipalities and counties also have their own taxes in addition to that. So it could be quite high when you add those things in too. And at least at the moment, states with income taxes, you cannot deduct more than, I think, 10% of, is it just income taxes or is it income and real estate taxes combined? Can't be deducted against your federal income, which in effect doubles the rate of tax if it's non-deductible. So these are technical problems that, frankly, I don't clutter my mind up very much because they're somewhat irrelevant to me. Yeah. But look, I guess the best state to go to, if you don't mind the weather and the long days and short nights, or short days and long nights, depending on what time of year, is Alaska. It's the only state, I think, that has neither an income tax nor a sales tax. And since sales taxes, some places can run, I don't know, because there's not just state, but local sales taxes in a lot of places. Sales taxes can run 7-8% some places. So that's a major drag on your standard of living. I guess the best way to get around it is maybe you can pick an oddball state like Oregon. You can live in Washington state, which has no income tax, and you can buy everything, surreptitiously, of course, in Oregon next door, which has no sales tax. So you're getting a big jump in your standard of living from that point of view. And incidentally, here's a fun fact. It may not be up to date anymore, but you should register your car or cars, if you possibly can, in Oregon. Set up an Oregon corporation, get a confederate someplace outside of Portland, some smaller town in Oregon where this type of thing is easier, and register and buy your cars with the Oregon Corporation. Why? Because your registration is for 4 years. You don't have to renew it every year, which you do in a lot of states, like Colorado, where I used to live and you live. And you don't pay a sales tax. And if you're getting a nice car, that's a big hit. And you don't have to pay, I think to re-register a car every year can be quite expensive in a lot of states. I don't know what, I can't even remember. It's several percent anyway in Colorado.
Assessed value. Yep.
Yeah, but I registered my cars in Oregon for years, where the one time, one fee, $50, no problem, no sales tax, big savings, and a lot of other advantages of being an out-of-state car too. And it's owned by a corporation. My corporation was called something or other leasing. So, hey, I'm leasing a car. Oregon gave me the best deal. There I am in Colorado right now. I'd say, so sue me to the cop, but that wouldn't be smart. So it worked out very well.
Okay. All right. So
but now I generally buy nice used cars because I don't want a new one listen, I guess I'm getting too old school, that doesn't have a CD player in it to start with, because I really don't want the powers that be to know where I am at every minute. It's like driving a cell phone around when you have a new car. So I'd rather get like a brand new 10 or 15-year-old car, which I can buy cheaply enough that I can leave it by the side of the road if I get tired of it. And it works as good as a new one. So anyway, off on a tangent, but where should you live? You should don't live in one place if you can avoid it. Have your car registered in one place, your business, your tax residence in a tax-free state, you buy stuff in a sales tax-free state. You gotta move around here. Don't act like a milk cow where you're sitting in one place just being milked every day. I guess that would be my advice.
Okay. Someone asks if whether or not you think it's a good time to buy Argentine banks.
I don't follow the Argentine stock market. I probably should, because it's right now just across the Plate River. But Argentina is on such a slippery slope that it's a speculation. And I don't feel like I have enough good inside information to be able to speculate intelligently or successfully. So the answer to the question is, Argentina is a nice place to visit, and maybe for your money to visit for a period of time. But I'm not going to buy Argentine banks. Don't know anything about them. Frankly, I don't care.
Do you have any thoughts on Iran or Turkey as a potentially as a good place for a non-US citizen to be before the Great Reset?
I wish I could talk authoritatively about Iran. I blew my big chance to go there on an all-expense-paid polo junket years ago, which I think we've discussed in the past. So I've never been there, and perhaps I'll never go. But I've been to Turkey lots of times, and I think both countries, you've got the upper class who are very international, very cosmopolitan, very sophisticated. And hopefully those are the people you're going to run with. But I think in both of those countries, they're both Mohammedan countries. One Shiite, one Sunni. Probably doesn't make much difference from your point of view as a Westerner, but you get out into the hinterlands of these places, and these people are primitive. I mean, they really are. The most important things in their life are their religion and their family and what's going to happen to the grain crop in the fall. So not very stimulating, and you're not going to fit in. I don't think they're really good candidates, especially, Turkey really, listen, the fact that Erdogan has converted the Hagia Sophia back into a mosque, this is a bad sign, quite frankly. So it can be delightful. I mean, it used to be, it's funny how things change. Just a brief aside on this. Up until, well, when do you want to draw the line? I guess the collapse of the Byzantine Empire in 1453 is when that happened. Up until that point, really, Turkey, what is Turkey today, Anatolia, Asia Minor, call it what you will, was basically Greek. And in fact, up until World War I, a lot of today's Turkey was Greek. And if you go through parts of Western Turkey, even today, you'll see abandoned villages where the Greeks used to live and they moved out, and now all the buildings are falling apart. It's a little bit like Cyprus, between the Greek part and the Turkish part. No, I mean, look, Turkey's a great place to take a vacation on the seacoast, but I don't think it's a good candidate, frankly.
Yeah. I've been reading, I read Richard Mayberry's letter, and I know you're a friend of his and have as well for a long time. And he did talk about that conversion of that, I can't remember the name of the building, but to a mosque. And he also has just been predicting like that Turkey is be the center of a lot of war, in the coming years. And he just feels like there's this brewing conflict there. And who knows if that's correct, but it just doesn't seem like it's probably geopolitically the safest place in the world to be.
Yeah, it's kind of at the crossroads between the Balkans, pretty unstable place, and the Middle East, an even more unstable place. And Erdogan wants Turkey to become a great power again, like the Ottoman Empire. No, take a vacation there. Don't move there.
Good. Okay. Let's see. This is a good question. And follow up to that, someone wonders, how is it possible that you're able to memorize all of these dates and names and numbers that you have in mind? Like knowing that the fall of the Byzantine Empire in 1453, as you just said, I wouldn't know it if you hadn't just said it. Like, how is it that you think you are able to retain this kind of information for so long?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I find that I'm forgetting more than I'm learning at this point. Maybe my mental hard drive has reached a point where I have to kick out some data in order to put some new data in. So it's largely random. I don't know. I don't know. Listen, you remember you kind of remember what's important to you. Like, yeah. I'm not even sure if I could solve a quadratic equation anymore. Certainly used to take algebra, learn to do that. But can I do it anymore? Questionable, because it's been so long since I've done it, and it's irrelevant to day-to-day life.
Well, but so many things are relevant to day-to-day life. I remember sitting in Albania with you and some friends of ours, and you and our mutual friend Frank were having a debate, not a debate, but trying to recollect or see who could better remember the different Roman emperors. And I was sitting there with everyone else, sort of watching you and Frank go through these, and just I had no idea. I mean, we looked my friend Marin and I are sitting there looking at each other going, how is it possible these people know any of this stuff? Like this, talk about not relevant to today. It doesn't feel relevant today, but your memory with it is so, I don't know. It's so finely tuned toward it. It's very, I don't know. I've always been fascinated by it too.
I think it's a question of what you're interested in, perhaps. Maybe that's the answer. Uh, I've just finished watching that HBO show called The Queen's Gambit. Have you seen that yet?
No, I haven't.
Well, it's surprisingly interesting. At least to me, it was really interesting because when I was a kid, I used to play chess all the time. And in fact, in high school, we had Saturdays off, and a bunch of us used to just play chess all Saturday afternoon with each other. So I've always been kind of a chess aficionado. But that movie is worth watching because it's a great insight to how serious chess players are, where they memorize games and scores, hundreds of gambits in the beginning game, the middle game, end game. I mean, they know every piece of a minutia about chess there is to know. And I heard it said once, and it may be true, that there are as many possible combinations of pieces on a board as there are atoms in the known universe. Hard to contemplate, but then again, you take.
I think that's for
that?
That's for Go, for the game, for the Chinese game Go.
Yeah, perhaps that's true. Maybe it's true of chess too. I don't know. Of course, there are more squares on a Go board than there are on a chessboard. Makes sense. But I guess it's just a question of what interests you and what seems to be important. Although, as we've discussed before, nothing's important, especially considering that the universe itself is 13.5 billion years old, and it's going to last trillions of years more. Even the universe is still an egg today. Even the universe doesn't know anything. It's still a babe in the crib. So, I mean, nothing's really important.
But
You just do the best you can.
Well, but I think you decide what's important. So the things that are interest you, that's what's important. I think it's that simple, isn't it? I mean, if it's interesting to you, then it is important to you.
Yes, that's right. And that suits me fine as a solipsist to believe that too.
Good. All right. So someone asks is if you're still writing and what creative endeavors you're involved with to stay active and alive enough to reach longevity, escape velocity, specifically talk about the, Kurzweil's ideas. Like, so what are you doing to keep yourself engaged and interested and curious enough about what's happening in the world that, maybe you make it to the singularity and that happens is something you're interested in participating in?
Yeah, I think that would be a lot of fun to make it to the singularity. So what am I doing here? Well, this must be a newbie because we've talked about all this stuff before a lot, I think.
Yeah, I know. There are new people coming in all the time.
Well, what am I writing? I've got 3 novels, which I'm very proud of. I think are quite good. And if you like to read fiction, I urge you to read them. So that's the first part of the answer to the question. And you and I are bouncing around this idea of writing a book called The Renaissance Man, which may or may not ever get done because it's such an intimidating project. And other than that, what do? Well, I do this show several times a week with you. I write an article for the internationalman.com once a week. Occasionally still write something for Casey Research, although I have zero ownership or control or anything to do with it, but I still write something for them once in a while. And other than that, I like to use my gym to pump some iron, use my pool to go swimming, and read books. I guess that's about that. It's pretty simple, actually. Don't go anywhere in these days of the phony hysteria.
Yeah, but that was one thing that was really great about yesterday is having the opportunity to, to spend time with, even virtually, with, an old friend of yours or, someone you've known and share a lot in common with. And if you haven't seen that episode, I encourage you to people to go watch that from yesterday.
I think that was one of our more fun episodes with Kolya.
It really was. And I think it's just because we didn't really know what we were going to talk about when we got on the call, and you hadn't talked to him in a while. And, and I was just curious about his background and knowing that he's one of the most traveled men on earth. He just has a very unique perspective. And so being able to, associate even virtually with like-minded people is something that's still, I know you still put some energy into, including this group that you're meeting with later today, right?
Oh, yeah. We were talking about that. There's a long story on how I was invited into this group, but there's about 15 or 20 old Jews. They're all about my age. I guess I would classify as old. And one of them, Herb, is a billionaire. He's a real mocker, as they would say, in the art market. Very, very big in the New York art market. So Herb has put together this group, and I got invited to it. Maybe they think I'm a Jew too, because maybe they think I've changed my name. And of course, I'm kind of an honorary member of the tribe in that, when I was involved in selling, most of my friends and associates, my mentors, were all Jews. And it's interesting being able to pass as a member of the tribe, because you know enough Yiddish and you know enough this and that. So anyway, there I am with these guys. And this is every Friday at about 2:00 Eastern time. They have a virtual Zoom get-together to make up for a luncheon group that many of us were parts of. And I've gotten rather bored with it, frankly, because these guys, although they're all rich and successful, they don't talk about anything important. They've got opinions. I like this, I don't like that, but they don't explain, here are the reasons, A, B, C, D, why I feel the way I do. That would make for an interesting conversation. But they're just assertions and random opinions and not very well thought out. And I don't like to say anything because the way I interpret the world is so damn different from these guys. But, so I usually, when I'm asked a question or when we have a little go round where everybody, does 2 or 3 minutes about what he thinks about this subject, my views are so outre that I almost don't like to say anything because nobody really likes to be the black sheep. I've always been a black sheep, but nobody really wants to advertise that. It's usually not smart to advertise that you're a black sheep for all kinds of reasons. But I guess I'll go to it today, and I'm just going to take the gloves off because I'm so tired of being frustrated by hearing stupid things from intelligent people. Anyway, so I do that too, sometimes once a week, and maybe today is going to be the last time I've done that. I like to keep my finger on the pulse of the hoi polloi, but it's a question of diminishing returns, and there's better ways of doing that, I guess.
All right. Next question is, do you have any opinion on the New Hampshire's Free State Project?
Yeah, that's interesting. Do you know Boston Tea Party, so-called?
Yes, I'm a big fan of his. Actually, I'm a friend of his. I like him a lot.
Yeah, I've known him for many years too. And he was very involved in the Free County or whatever it is movement. Although he was pushing for Wyoming up near the South Dakota line in the Black Hills. So anyway, I've kind of followed this, it seems to me that it's like at some point, Keene, New Hampshire, which I guess is where this is settled, I've never been there personally, is going to be like one-stop shopping for the bad guys when they want to round up the usual suspects. So maybe it's not so good from that point of view. And I think it's kind of an artificial community. And listen, as you well know, Matt, I started something kind of like that in Cafayate, Argentina. And it just didn't work out well. Because I think if you're going to put together a community of kind of like-minded people, it has to be organic.
Yes.
As opposed to inviting everybody in from the highways and the byways. Because when you do that, you get the lame and the halt and the blind. And eventually the blind start leading the doubly dismembered and it all falls apart. So I guess my answer to the question is, yeah, I really like to be around people that we share the same values, same interests, so forth, same view of the way the world works or should work. But I don't think I'm going to move to Keene. No.
No. Well, and I think the key with these things is that no community is built on an artificial basis. I mean, they come through, organic ties, economic ties, familial ties, maybe religious ties, whatever. But it must, like, for it to actually be a community, it must form organically, right? Or it just doesn't work.
You're absolutely right. And I think one bit of proof of that is the fact that so many governments around the world have created capital cities in the middle of nowhere.
Brazil's great.
All there is government and the kind of people that like government and work for government. Jesus, what a horrible place to live. I mean, you got Brasilia, well, Washington, D.C. was an early example of that. And, that place is just horrible. They've done it in Kazakhstan. I think they've done it in Burma. I'd like to see how many countries actually do have capital cities created from whole cloths. No, bad idea.
When people look at like the examples of the places that are really successful, a lot of times they'll point to like a Hong Kong or a Singapore, but I think people neglect the fact that they had natural economic advantages in those specific locations that actually provided the glue that drove innovation and activity there. And I think you can't just put that anywhere in the world and have it work. Like it has this huge, it's like sitting on a gold mine. Basically, Singapore was. If you had a little order, then you could take advantage of the ports and the shipping routes and all that. So there's a huge economic untapped opportunity, I guess, in Singapore that, once there was some order and some whatever, that it could bloom and become what it's become. But that you just can't do that anywhere.
Absolutely right. I mean, in Singapore and Hong Kong, their whole reason for being was as commercial centers being productive. So, yeah, great ideas. That's why they're successful.
Exactly. And I think one of these things, so I've been thinking a lot about this community stuff a lot for the last, few months in particular, but for years. And it seems that the one thing that's often missing from these communities is that the community must produce and export something. It must produce something of value to the external world, or else you're sort of doomed to this, economic stagnation or despair. I mean, I don't know how, like, it cannot succeed if there's just a place where you're dumping money internally. And I think this Free Cities project has that risk too. And I know Marco Wutzer's involved with that. And we should probably have someone on to talk about what they're doing there actually, but it seems like the same thing, where there's not economic activity that produces anything that is of value to the world that can be exported. Whereas what Singapore had, because of its shipping, it had that ability to produce value for the world.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. Starting something from nothing. Yeah, it's very problematic. Listen, I wish them well. I truly wish them well. I hope they're successful, but I'm not terribly optimistic about the prospects for it.
Okay, next question. What university or in what country would you send your 18-year-old to if they were insisting on college?
Yeah, well, the fact that they're insisting on going to college tells me that you've made a few mistakes already. Yeah. How did this idea get into the kid's head? And as we talked about the other day, I mean, the idea of misallocating 4 years of time and what amounts to most places today, all in at least $200,000 of money to have know-nothings with higher degrees yap at you and try to fill your head with all kinds of falsehoods. I mean, tragic error. Is it too late? Well, okay. If the kid, first of all, why are you sending him to college? If he wants to go to college, well, go, I'm not stopping you, but why do I have to pay for it to see you corrupted? And it would annoy me to see you corrupted. I mean, maybe that's the first counter argument to that, but let's suppose you don't want to do that for whatever reason. And he has to go to a place. I would probably choose, there's a place in Guatemala City called Universidad de San Francisco de Marroquín. And it's in Guatemala City, and it is a completely Austrian economic oriented free market university in, of all places, Guatemala, which is one of the last places in the world that I'd personally choose to live. Interesting place, but I wouldn't want to live there. So send them there. Or instead of going to an American university at huge expense and guaranteed corruption, he can go to any number of European universities for very low cost, and get some serious education in the world at large in a different country. That'd be good. But better is that you sat down with them. Look, if I was in your position with a kid like this, I'd say, look, you expect me to pay for your college. That's your ideal scenario. And I'd figure out how much time and money is involved. And then I'd have a rational discussion with him, because he probably hasn't thought about it, of all the other things you could do with that time and money. Like just the other day, we talked about this school in Bath, Maine, that in a period of 6 weeks teaches you everything about building and wiring and plumbing a house, and you do it hands-on. Well, that would be a good 6 weeks. And then we were talking, I don't know if we were on the air or not, I'd take a week and go to Tom Brown's Tracker School and learn woodcraft there, do that. And of course, while he's in high school, he should be taking martial arts just as it's a good discipline in many ways. So, okay, now you can go off to Hong Kong or Singapore or China or any number of places in the Orient, and you can live at a martial arts school. You can pretend you're Kwai Chang Caine with Master Po, and you can do that for as many months as you'd like. Very worthwhile experience. And there's like 100 things that you can do that'll take you around the world, different people, practical things. This idea of going to college, it's so stupid that I guess that's my answer.
Yeah, just the place that in Maine is called the Shelter Institute, and people were asking about it. You can find it on YouTube. Just search for Shelter Institute, and it's amazing. They've got lots of great videos on there as well, and they will teach you how to build a house. They seem like very interesting people. It's all run by multiple generation family actually. It seems pretty great. But yeah,
and I'm sure there's something like that would show you how to build a car and everything to do with engines and brake systems and all the rest of it. I mean, there's so many things like that are useful and practical. And as Robert Pirsig, I remember this book well, he wrote a book called Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. And kind of his basic theme or his point in that book was, look, everybody thinks that a motorcycle mechanic, greasy, long-haired, not much money, is basically the bottom of the barrel. But as he points out, no, if he's going to be a good motorcycle mechanic, if he's not going to over torque the head with his wrench, he's got to learn something about metallurgy, and he's got to learn something about physics. And if you learn something about torquing the bolt head down, and one thing's aluminum and one thing's steel, then you're going to learn about chemistry, and chemistry leads you to physics, and physics leads you to astrophysics, and that leads you to philosophy, which leads you to literature. So the fact you're a motorcycle mechanic is just an entree to the world. So this whole idea of going to college is just so goddamn ridiculous. I'm flummoxed. I wish somebody told me that before I went to college.
Well, I think the thing is that the college, at least at this point, seems like it's a delay in the engagement with the world, or with any kind of work that would help you lead to you understanding the world better. So it doesn't even matter necessarily what else you do, so long as you do something that actually is forcing you to engage with the world, like whether it be as a motorcycle repairman or building a house. I mean, it becomes an anchor, or the way I like to think of it is almost like a lattice work. You could, if you have to have one real fixed piece to begin to build your understanding of the way that the world works. But if it's all theoretical, it's all arbitrary, essentially, or abstract, I mean, because it's all classroom based stuff or whatever, you never really build that real knowledge. You might have some factoids in your head, but you never really understand how anything actually works or how really to do anything.
Yes, that's exactly right. That's the way I feel about it too. Yeah.
Okay, so let's see. Next question here. Did you read Noah Harare's book Sapiens or Homo Deus? Did you read either of those?
I actually read both of them, and they're okay. As I recall, there's nothing objectionable in them that I knew. I mean, it's tracing the history of humans, past, present to future, kind of is the theme, I think. He doesn't make any cosmic breakthroughs at all. There's nothing original in it at all. I mean, they're okay to read. The interesting thing about those books is they became like a phenomenon where all of the literate types in the New York Review of Books and so forth were saying, oh, this is a work of genius. It's not. It's just, it's an okay book. Seems like by an okay, smart guy. Okay, great. But why was this thing, why did it turn into such a cause célèbre? I don't know. Maybe because most of these book reviewers don't know much about anything. Okay to read, but it's not going to change anything. I mean, no cosmic breakthroughs in those books that I'm aware of. Maybe I'm forgetting something. Maybe somebody can point some out. I don't know.
The only two things that stick out to me is that I didn't understand how critical, at least the way I remember him framing it, how critical communication was. Basically, sharing ideas among humans was, he thought, a big gateway to, human civilization growing. Because basically, you could, by being able to spread memes, almost, you were able to organize at scale humans in a way that just, that maybe separated us from all other, species that, that might have, I don't know, might have evolved. And I think so. Language and communication being key, which of course it seems obvious once I thought about it, but I hadn't thought about that deeply before. And the other thing I remember, he had it seemed like the Homo Deus one was pretty dystopian. I mean, really, like this merging of machines and the which, that's the singularity, which is the stuff we talked about earlier. Which of course, so none of his ideas necessarily were new, but it did seem like it had kind of a negative edge to it in the way that he was seeing it evolve.
Yeah, I recall that. Okay, yeah, they're worth reading. I guess my main problem with those books is the way they became such a big deal with the literati and the cognoscenti, which kind of leads to the fact that these people that control the media, the literary media, which is in this country the New York Review of Books, in England it's the London Review of Books, and to a lesser degree the New York Times Book Review. Those are probably the three big function things. Well, the Atlantic Magazine, a few things like that. That this is like a coterie of people that all have the same statist, collectivist, socialist, neo-Marxist ideas, and they jump on a book by one of their own and make it into a big deal as a way of promoting their ideas. I don't know if Harare is a socialist or not. kind of got the impression he was.
Yeah, I did too.
So this is one of the things I resent, the fact that not only have the universities been captured by these horrible people, but the literary world has been captured by them as well.
Well, it seems like all institutions have been captured by them, to be honest.
That's true. It's amazing, but it's true. Well, as we were talking about yesterday.
Okay, so let's see. Next question. I've heard a few analysts, Jim Rickards specifically, talk about deflation and how gold performs well in deflationary and inflationary environments. He says, I understand the case for gold performing well in an inflationary environment, but I'm less clear on how gold performs well in a deflationary environment. Can you add some insights to that?
Yeah, we've discussed this in the past, and basically it's that, look, the key with gold, one of the keys, is it's the only financial asset that's not simultaneously somebody else's liability. Well, that's true of Bitcoin too, actually. But in a deflationary environment, when bonds and stocks and bank accounts go to zero because they're defaulted on, they're wiped out, the gold is still there. And because it would be a scary time, people will panic into it and they'll sell whatever they can to buy gold because it can't be defaulted on, which is what happens during deflations. So that's why gold is a deflation hedge, in brief.
Makes sense. Okay. Question about the way you make investments, and maybe not necessarily now, but in the past. There's wonder if there's a special way you set up your trades. For example, using stop losses or hedging the trades in some way. I know one time you told me, I made a terrible mistake in gold futures. Like it just was going to cost me a huge amount of money. And, I kept meeting my capital calls as gold was going down during the financial crisis. And you told me, I told you about it. You said, Matt, don't you know, you never make the capital call. Like you don't do it. So, I mean, are there other rules or other ways you structure your trades that might be helpful for people to understand?
Yeah, Harry Schultz. I don't know if anybody knows who Harry Schultz is anymore, but Harry was one of the original and one of the greatest of people that wrote independent newsletters. And his motto was, I'm often wrong, but never for more than 24 hours. And that kind of follows up with what you just said. Look, I'm not a trader, not very good at it. I just try not to be too wrong for too long. Not nearly as good as Harry, 24 hours. Well, been wrong a lot longer than that on a lot of things. But, this is just something that you kind of get through experience. And everybody's got to find his own path up the mountain.
One of the biggest things, it seems to be, is that where I made mistakes early on in my investment life was that just asset allocation, simple asset allocation, that if I believed in some idea, I invested too heavily in that idea. And then when it went wrong, or it looked like it was going wrong, I didn't have the staying power even to stay in the trade, even when it would have worked. You know what I mean? Like people, for instance, our first question about gold stocks, gold and gold stocks going down. And if you're way over allocated, you have so much of your wealth in gold and gold stocks today, then I could see why you would be very disturbed by even this small, this temporary fluctuation in the market. But if you allocate properly, you can be better off, right?
That's right. And God forbid that something comes up where you have to sell and you're forced to sell. Of course, it's always at the bottom. And this becomes a real big problem when you're dealing in highly leveraged situations like commodity futures. And I've traded commodity futures for many, many years. And I've got to say, with rare exceptions along the way, not terribly successfully for all kinds of reasons. I mean, that's this whole separate discussion. One of the main reasons is this. It's that you can buy a future for, let's say, $1,000 of margin and control $30,000 or $50,000 worth of, and you could be right. Commodities have been going up for the last year, and you can get wiped out by that little downturn and it's gone and the market then keeps going higher. So you can't be undercapitalized when you're doing things like this. You know, another old saw of the market is be right and sit tight, but you can't do that if you're playing on margin and things go against you for too long in the wrong direction. It's, listen, it's a question. What I'd suggest anybody do, especially with futures, is paper trade. Decide where you'd enter, what your objective is, just all of the questions you have to ask yourself, and then just see what happens on paper instead of actually putting a money bet down.
Right.
And the results might be surprising.
Yeah, it's I decided for my whole gold futures fiasco that trading futures was not for me. That's what I learned from that.
No, I do it. I do it for the same reason that I like to play online poker, frankly. It's fun. It's amusing. I mean, it has some benefits, but I don't play for big money, either in poker or in the futures market.
That's the key, I think, asset allocation again. You know, I mean, a capital, or like how much of your capital you have tied up in a single trade or a single idea that can make you, you can cause really bad decisions if you have too much.
Ah, God, who wants to wind up living under a bridge?
Not me, although they might be the only people that I think like the homeless people have like the you know, they don't have to wear masks.
No, true.
I think they don't have to follow the social distancing rules.
No,
So maybe the path to freedom in the future.
that's true. And for all we know, there are rocket scientists and chess masters that have fallen upon financial hard times, have become psychologically problematical, and would be interesting to talk to living under the bridge too. I mean,
Especially
anything
if we ourselves become psychological problematical, then you know, we might have more in common to talk to them about.
anything's possible.
All right, so there's some questions about kids because we talked about children yesterday with our guest, and so and this has come up a couple times, and you can talk about this or not talk about this if you don't want to. But someone asks, would Mr. Casey say he has any regrets at not having, adopting, or raising children?
Well, you always think about these things. It's what's more important, quite frankly, to replicate your genes or to replicate memes that you like. And I'm a great believer in the importance of genetics. But frankly, my genes, which is why you want to have kids so that the genes can continue, they're not my friends or your friends either. Why? Because our bodies are just survival machines for the genes. In other words, they're using me as a host where they're the parasite and they're looking, well, we were talking, was you talking about the eagle yesterday, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. That's the relation we have with our genes. They're not my friends. I mean, they're just accidents of birth, and here I am with them. So I actually, from that point of view, I don't care about kids. And maybe in the genetic lottery with a well-chosen female, maybe your kids will turn out to be absolutely great, but no guarantees. I mean, Commodus was the son of Marcus Aurelius, and since everybody's seen Gladiator, everybody knows who those people are. Didn't work out very well. Lots of examples like that. So you may love the kid just because his genes are in your blood, but I don't relate to that. I think memes are more important. And anyway, look, I appreciate, as we were talking about the other day, the advantages of living in a tight, friendly community like the Amish, for instance. A lot of advantages. I can see how that could be very helpful towards living a happy life. And we see this with the Mormons to a lesser degree and so forth, a number of other groups like that. But I think when you have kids, it's the luck of the draw. I mean, I know great people who are great parents and have great kids, And I know some that their kids are just monsters. How did that happen? I'm not sure.
And awful
So
parents who have great kids sometimes.
that's right. That happens too. So I think that there's a lot of wisdom to be had from the Romans. And the Romans, well, it was mainly the Greeks. If they thought the kid wasn't worthy, they put him on the mountainside and let him die of exposure. Yeah, I can see that. Okay, I've got no problem with that. Yes, I know there's probably going to be some doctrinaire pro-life types that'll say, "Oh, that's awful. You're a horrible human being. I'm going to cancel my subscription," or whatever the hell it is. I don't care. But that's what the Greeks did. And then what the Romans did was actually more clever, I think, is they would adopt kids, but they would not adopt kids as babies. You're still getting a pig in the poke, and you don't even have the benefit of your own genes, or 6 or 8 or 10 even. They'd wait until the kid had clearly passed the age of reason and you could see what you're getting. And what's the reason you want to do that? If you have assets, and we all die probably someday, so it's a question of who are you going to give this stuff to? Not going to give it to the state, that's for sure. I'd rather light it all on fire than have the state take it.
Bonfire party. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So if you want a family, I think you should adopt one. But if you're going to adopt one, wait until you know what you're getting in the kid. Hey, this isn't a charity. I don't believe in charity. And we could. I don't know if we've even had a conversation about charity or not.
We actually have not, but I'll put that back on our list because that's an important thing to talk about. It's
yeah,
really,
that might be interesting. People have so many bad and wrong ideas about charity.
well,
Anyway.
let me make one appeal for kids that I think, just because obviously I have kids, so part of this could just be me simply trying to justify my own decision to have children. I don't know, but
well, and it makes you feel good, and if it makes you feel good, that makes sense.
I think I think that a lot of the people, though, one of the reasons why I think that the world is so destructive at this point, or why things are going so bad, is because of people's lack of skin in the game. So it's just like when you have government bureaucrats and bloggers and people whose job's not affected by having lockdowns, clamoring for a small pizzeria down the street to be shut down. Like it costs them nothing to say we should lock down, everything should be shut down. Likewise, you have all of these people saying, kids should not be in school today. And I mean, there's a whole argument about school, but there's against schooling, which I totally agree with. But when you have so many people who have no children who are saying it's dangerous, schools should be closed, but they have no skin in the game. There's no consequence. They shouldn't have any involvement in the decision for it. And I think a lot of our society is people who have nothing whatsoever to do with circumstances, deciding what should happen to people who are affected by circumstances, and including our long-term future. Like if you do think much more long-term when you think about, I don't think about my genes necessarily. I mean, there's the drive to have children, of course, is driven biologically by our genes. True. But at this point, I don't think it's as much about my genes as that I don't want to see my kids enter, I don't want to see them, live in the dark ages. I'd rather not that. I'd rather that happen. So I'm interested in engaging in behaviors that are more likely to make it so that is not going to happen. And I think that the engagement with reality, it's a lot like, going to, becoming a motorcycle a repairman, I guess, instead of going to college. The engagement with the real world, with like real consequences of stuff, forces better. It can force more thoughtfulness. And I think that having kids does that, because you think you can control them and you realize you can't. I mean, it's a really hugely humbling experience, frankly, to have kids, I think.
Good point. Well, I guess that boat has sailed as far as I'm concerned. I'm not about to, I'm not about to engage in that at this point. But yeah, that's all true. Anyway, as you were saying, with all these bloggers, that don't have any skin in the game. They're just busybodies. I hate busybodies. No skin in the game, but an opinion about everything.
Yep, exactly. Okay, so someone asks about the Free State projects. So I'm sorry, not the Free State projects, but the what is it? The Free Private Cities project. Do you know much about that project? That's it's in Rotan. Is that where it is, in Honduras?
Yeah, I've heard about these things, but and I know some of the people that are around it. But like I said before, I'm not terribly optimistic about it because most of the people that are involved don't have a lot of capital to make things happen, and there's not enough infrastructure to make meaningful entrepreneurial activity easy anyway. So, and you get all kinds of flotsam and jetsam that wind up there.
Right.
So it's got to be organic. So once again, I wish them well and hope for the best, but not optimistic.
Okay. Someone asks, is there a point where Doug would conclude that Bitcoin has replaced gold as a safe haven asset?
Yeah, I mean, it's competitive today. It's different, safe in different ways. They both have their advantages, but I think Bitcoin's here to stay at this point. The only thing, I guess the main thing I fear is the arrival of Bitcoin 2.0. And when that happens, if it turns out there's something so much better, then everybody's going to start unloading Bitcoin to buy Bitcoin 2.0. And if you're not quick on the trigger, you might get hurt. That's a possibility, I think, isn't it?
It is a possibility, but I don't see it happening like in an overnight fashion. I'd say it's much more of an evolution where you see a why. If you think of it as, the weird thing about it is it's technology and it's an asset. So you almost look at it as the adoption of new technology is almost a better way to think about those trends than it is to think about it as switching from one asset to another, because switching from one asset to another can happen very quickly. But technology adoption, it seems to follow an arc. And you could make a reasonable argument that Bitcoin has just actually begun that really big leg of that adoption arc of technology, and Ethereum is just behind it, but actually accelerating faster because it's newer. But I just can't imagine. There are lots of these competing cryptocurrencies that are out there already, tons of them, but it's not like, it seems like they're competing in the marketplace. And so one will start, it's almost like the global currency market where, the pound starts to look strong, and I don't know, the Argentine peso looks awful as always. I mean, and you're just competing between these different things. And I think you'll see it happen, and it's not something that's going to happen overnight.
Yeah, you're probably right about that. Yeah. Yeah, it won't happen overnight, probably. So, but
Someone asked related to Bitcoin, do you think it's possible that the Fed is allowing Bitcoin to rise to take some of the heat off gold and silver? Because, gold and silver's rise might make it more clear how awful, our money printing policies are, and Bitcoin still seems like a novelty to others. So if capital flows into Bitcoin instead, then maybe that serves their interests in making people think the currencies are stable.
yeah, well, this is related, of course, to the question that's been around for a very long time. And that is, are the governments or the financial powers that be trying to artificially suppress the price of gold? And therefore, would Bitcoin be a new way to play that game by taking capital from gold? Well, as far as the gold part of it's concerned, look, these people really they don't believe in gold. They don't care about gold. They think it's a laughing stock. It's a pet rock. So I don't think that they're closely related,
Yeah.
frankly. No.
Okay. In a prior episode, we talked about the fact that you were, looking at some property in Virginia, and someone says, "Why Virginia? I hate this goddamn state."
Hmm. Well, listen, maybe I'm like a salmon swimming upstream. Fact of the matter is that although I grew up in Chicago, basically, I also grew up around Washington, D.C., a lot of it in Virginia. And I like the Tidewater area, just like the Chesapeake Bay, like that part of the Atlantic coast, point number one. point number two is the real estate market in Eastern Virginia, Charlottesville going east, incredible bargains. I mean, having lived in Aspen, where everything is grossly, ridiculously overpriced, you can go to Eastern Virginia and get a fantastic house with everything you can imagine, 10,000 square feet and maybe 50 acres of land around it. Maybe you don't want much more land than that because it becomes a pain. Couple $3 million. And yeah, I like that. Then I've got like a walk away asset, if you would. Things got bad, just walk away. Because anyway, I'd take out a big mortgage at like whatever it is, 2.5 or 3%.
Yeah.
And it's the bank's problem anyway.
Yeah, and it's not like you're.
And I don't mind sticking the bank with it, because banks are actually like arms of the federal government at this point anyway. So the system's become so corrupt and intertwined. I just like the area, that's all. I mean, I've looked all over the country. Where would be a great place to go? I don't know. It's a good choice.
Well, and it's not like you're
I'm
making.
not going to live there anyway. It's going to be a vacation home as far as anybody else is concerned. In fact.
Right. I think that's the key point. Okay, so let's see. Someone asked if we anticipate any meetups in the future, physical meetups, and actually, I did set up years ago. You set up something called Casey Files, or this was set up through Casey Research to try and give readers of Casey Research essentially a chance to organize in these Neil Stephenson-like files. And I set up an account through Meetup.com that basically it can kind of automate this in some ways. Right after I set it up, they sent me an email saying I need to verify some stuff. So they might not even like what we're talking about. They might not, I don't know. It's really weird why they wanted me to verify some things after I'd never experienced that before. But I did set that up, and there may be some opportunities to meet up with some of our viewers at Freedom Fest this year, which you're slated to be a speaker at. And there may be some other opportunities like that. But if we get on a platform like this where we can organize them, it could be enjoyable. So can you talk to me about your Casey Files concept and how it was done before a little bit?
Well, listen, I really like getting together with like-minded people physically in the same space, because, for 30 years, I ran something called the ERIS Society, ERIS. I don't even know if it has anything on the internet anymore, but we had, just because it was a great opportunity to meet people that you always wanted to meet. And we had, the guys that came to that thing were everybody from Bert Rutan, the aeronautical engineer, Paul McCready, another aeronautical engineer, to Sonny Barger, who ran the Hells Angels, to all these people. It was great to meet them. And of course, a lot of people that were just ordinarily like-minded. So we met for 30 years. And then kind of enough was enough. Like everything else in life, the second law of thermodynamics took over and degenerated. And it turned out we had lots of, gradually hangers-on insinuated themselves that were looking for a free party and to meet some neat people, as opposed to bring something to the party themselves. So after a while, I just figured the hell with it. So still, it was a good thing while it lasted, at least in the early days. Should we do it again? Well, I'm not going to do it again, but I'd certainly come to it if somebody else did it again. I might anyway. And
the Casey Files was basically
Casey Files. Kind of, yeah. What we used to do, my ex-partner, David Galland, had this great idea. And when I was living in New Zealand, we used to have a get-together every year down at the harbor in Auckland. And generally about 50 Kiwi subscribers would show up, and we'd sit around and drink and smoke cigars, and it was a lot of fun. So that'd be great. And that was in New Zealand, for God's sake. We had 50 people that showed up. But we don't do that anymore because Casey Research is now just a marketing organization and they're not interested in stuff like that. I don't know if we should, I mean,
I'm going to attempt to.
do you think it's worth trying? Do you think it's worth trying again, or?
I think that if it can be done in a way that it doesn't reach everything, then it could be worth it. And I think that maybe this technology that's available now through this meetups.com, which most people are probably familiar with, might make that possible. And I know I'm going to be on the road a lot over the next year in this RV I got, and this Freedom Fest coming up, and there might be some opportunity to just sort of beta test whether or not it's worth putting any energy into. I'm certainly open to trying some stuff, but I don't want to put on a conference or anything like that. But just meeting with people like what we talk about here and are of like mind, I think there's some value there.
Yeah, I think it might be. I think that's worth trying that. So we should perhaps just give that a shot.
I have a couple quick questions for you, and from last stuff, just wrapping up here from Phil. He asks a series of questions like, do you have a favorite whiskey?
Well, actually, I do. If you saw the movie, The Hustler, starring Paul Newman and Jackie Gleason, you might recall, few people do, that the whiskey they drank there was Old JTS Brown, a bourbon. And so I said, hey, that's as good a reason as any to, but of course, as stupid as American corporate executives are, they killed the brand Old JTS Brown. I mean, there they had a classic movie with two great actors, the best free advertising in the world. And what do these morons do? They kill the brand. So for sentimental reasons, that was my favorite whiskey, but it no longer exists. Other than that, I drink bourbon generally.
And so along those lines, favorite beer?
That one's pretty easy. I like dark beer. The Germans call it Dunkelsbier, which is not very carbonated and, kind of rich and heavy. It's almost like an alcoholic chocolate milk. And incidentally, one of the best dark beers in the world I've ever had comes from Salta, Argentina. Surprised the hell out of me. So yeah, when I drink beer, that's what I drink, a dark beer.
With cars, are you?
But hopefully a real dark beer. I mean, like one of those, not just like a Negro Modelo or something like that, which is kind of like halfway between a lager and a genuine dark beer.
Cars, do you like manual or automatic transmission?
Well, for small cars, I like manual. And for big cars, I like automatic. And of course, my favorite car has always been the Ford Cobra, the original 289 Cobras. And there you have to have a manual transmission because it's just fun. I might get a replica car because the replicas of those are actually supposed to be better than the originals. And the originals were just unbelievably good and fun.
Well,
so it depends, but like,
go ahead.
I was going to say, my other favorite, practical car, best bargain in the world for a sports car is a Corvette. You can only get them now, I guess, with automatic transmissions, but you want an automatic transmission in a Corvette that's got a lot of horsepower. I don't know, it depends. You have an opinion?
Older cars, I really like manual transmission, but newer cars, super high horsepower cars, actually they're very, you can't keep up with it. I have a BMW now that has 617 horsepower and it has paddle shifters and stuff like that. So you can have a form of manual transmission, although that's not at all the same, but I don't think you could drive it well, honestly, if it was manual transmission. But go back to an M5 from 1998 or something like that. Way better to have a manual transmission there than it would be automatic.
Yeah, and there are other advantages to a manual transmission that I guess a lot of people have forgotten about because nobody even knows how to change a tire anymore. But if you have a dead battery, you can jumpstart the car by pushing it downhill or something. And do that with an automatic. This is a kind of a fun fact, which I think a lot of people aren't even aware of anymore.
Yeah, it was I had to do the whole pop the clutch strategy several times in old cars.
Right.
Yeah. Get all your friends together, just I'll give it a push so you can get it going a little bit.
Yeah, or when you park it, make sure you park it on a hillside so that you can, stuff like that.
Let's see, two more like this. Rock or pop music? Do you have a preference between rock or pop music?
I like them both, but not interested at all in rap or heavy metal. And my favorite bands are the Rolling Stones, also love the Beach Boys, and Dire Straits. And I'm a big fan of early Madonna also. She was great. But
do you know that I own a big part of, or I own a part of the Dire Straits music catalog? So every time it's played, I earn a little royalty. So hopefully everyone will go listen.
That's fantastic. You chose wisely. They are a fantastic band, and their lyrics are absolutely great.
Amazing thing about that royalty is that actually it's, despite the fact the band has been disbanded for 25 years, something like that, royalties in that have gone up. Like it's earning more money this year than it earned last year, and a lot more than it earned 5 years ago.
Yeah, damn it. I would have joined that. I would have joined that party with you. Anyway, that's very good to hear.
Yeah.
But it's not just that. I was looking at the songs that I have downloaded on my Apple, and the single artist that I have the most on my favorite playlist is actually Nina Simone. So that's neither rock nor pop.
She's fantastic. Fantastic. One of the greatest of all time. Okay. So last question here is favorite athlete. And I actually think I know the answer to this. Maybe I don't. Favorite athlete of all time.
I might surprise you. When it comes to overall athletics, you got to pick a decathlon winner, I think. And I'd go for Bruce Jenner just before he won the decathlon. My choice number 2 would probably be Muhammad Ali.
Great choices. I knew Bruce Jenner. That's when I knew. I knew it was going to be him.
Yeah.
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 I also love it because it just messes with people when you say that. What?
How the mighty have fallen.
Yeah. No kidding. All right. Well, I think that's all the questions we have for today. It's been a good week. We've had good topics this week. It's been fun. So,
Yes.
Yeah. So we'll be back next week. Thank you very much for your time again, Doug. I really appreciate it, and we'll talk to you soon.
Well, and thank you, Matt, for making it all possible, among other things.
It's an honor. It is.